course, the notion of purpose has been around forever, right? I mean, it turns out in most societies, organizations are legal fiction, right? And they're a fiction, and what happens is an organization, in a sense, has to say, here's the thing we intend to do in order to justify being a business in the first place, right? So every organization has a purpose, right? The premise behind common purpose is really saying we have to reconnect concern about shareholder value and the value that that corporation provides society in a larger sense. We have to reconnect concern about GDP and the larger set of social concerns that sit within a country. What happened is, for a long time, those very simple measures actually were equated to all of the other things we care about, right? They become separated in part, and because they are, we actually need to bring them back together. So the notion of common is, say, all nations have a set of objectives they're trying to achieve that need to happen concurrently. You can't let one succeed and the others fail. The notion of common in organizations is companies are part of a larger society and they need to work within that society to make it better. Right? It turns out we don't work well as companies if the societies of which we're a part aren't effective. We need to distinguish the notion of common purpose, as we wrote in the paper, from an organization's purpose, right? Every organization has a purpose. It's really important in challenging times and changing times to go back and revisit it, right? The reason you have to go back and revisit it is you need some ballast through all that change, right? So we actually did it at PwC, and what we did was sort of say, well, you know, if you think about where we began for two reasons. We began to create trust in the capital markets and trust in society, and we began to sort of help people solve important financial problems, at the time financial problems. Now it turns out, if you think about that and the business model, right? The business model is the way you configure your assets to assure you make money in light of the nature of the products you're offering and the world you find yourself part of, right? That's actually transient, right? So it turns out the business model will change. If I go to any firm, they have to link those two, right? You have to link the purpose of the firm, right? So why is Sberbank, right? Why is Microsoft, with the ways in which you make money. The purpose should inform the answer to what is our business model. The business model does not inform the answer to what is our purpose. So this question is sort of, what's the role of management in the purpose of the organization, right? And the thing to remember is that all of us inherit the legacy of those who came before. And so I don't get to pick the purpose. It was decided by the founders, really. Right. Now it evolves because the world changes. So we up the game inside PwC, and firms can evolve it, but you don't change the basic purpose of a firm, right? Because if you did, you'd start over. Right? So our responsibility is actually really three parts. The first is to make sure that the products and services and offerings of the organization are consistent with the purpose, and if they're not, then we probably shouldn't have them. Right. Now the good news is that if your purpose is well articulated, there's a lot of important things you can do for a client, right, or for a customer, or for whoever you're doing the service for. So that's the first one: is to rationalize the system, both the business model and the things we do. Right. The second one is to actually make sure that people understand the purpose and why we're making choices consistent with it. Right, so that is to actually sort of articulate it as leaders so that people see, oh, I know why they did that, right? I see why they did that. And then the third is to actually drive it in the organization so it becomes a source of differential advantage and it becomes a way of attracting people who believe in the purpose and are consistent with it. So we use a very simple phraseology inside PwC, which is why, what, how, right? So why is our purpose, right? And why doesn't change. What is our strategy, right? So you can think about the earlier conversation about business models as a part of the strategy question, right? And how is the culture, right? Now there are other elements of how, right? Sort of our compensation system and other pieces, but the primary driver of how is culture, and the primary driver of culture is our values.